Hi, everybody. This is Steve Bookbinder, your sales coach, and I am delighted. It is my pleasure and privilege today to be interviewing David Buonfiglio. David and I have worked together, and from my point of view, David has been in a perfect position to see the changes that have happened in the media space, particularly in the television going to multi-platform space. And I'm going to ask him in a moment just to tell you the details of his background. But I've had the chance of working with him, and I know him to be somebody who came from the media background, television background. And then as I worked with him, David ushered in not only a lot of digital tools and marketing services for his team to sell, but I've never seen a company with a wider range of digital solutions than the solutions that you brought in to the company that you were working with. So, David, can you share where you've been and now what you're doing with the TVB?
Sure. Thanks, Steve. Pleasure to be with you. I started in digital 20 years ago at WCVB TV in Boston, where I actually kind of helped relaunch their website there, and at the point where that station and many stations were going to try to start monetizing their website traffic. So I have been in the digital space for broadcasters since then. Right now I am with the Television Bureau of Advertising, which is the trade association for the sales side of local broadcast television. Before that, I ran sales for a cable network, a regional cable network. Before that, I was a local sales manager at a CBS affiliate. And several years ago, I actually started in media as a reporter. I did a master's degree in journalism and did television news for about 3 years before I moved into sales. So anyway, but the TVB and my work with the TVB is relatively new because the TVB had just created a VP of digital. They did so to be more reflective of what is going on at broadcast TV stations now. There's a lot of work being done on the digital side of the business, a lot of resources being put there, a great deal of innovation happening there. And so the Television Bureau of Advertising wanted to have somebody within the group who could sort of talk to that and speak to it and help the group navigate what is happening in the broadcast world as it relates to all the digital work that they're doing. So that's what brings me to this job.
Great. Thanks for that, framing that up. Let me just unpack some of that. You know, we have a lot of clients that sell media in a local market, and it feels like in some ways local advertisers are finally sort of catching up to the things that national advertisers do. I also see on a local level companies that say, why can't I be a national advertiser? Why do I don't need to be restricted by the brick and mortar store, e-commerce and everything else. So what are you seeing that's changing with regard to local advertisers? And can you help us get a feel for some of the new innovations that you're ushering in to help them?
Sure. So the world of local has changed very, very dramatically over the course of my time in digital, certainly. And particularly as it relates to television, you can imagine that 20 years ago, television advertising was about running spots and then hoping that people walked in the door. Maybe that they phoned, that maybe they called you. But most importantly, the idea was simply to run advertising and really on any traditional media and hope that generated foot traffic. What local advertisers now are really not struggling with, but trying to wrestle with is how do they compete and succeed in this new digital world where so much of what used to happen in the stores now happens online, with so much research and reviews, reading reviews and writing reviews and all the things that happen online for all kinds of businesses. Now, obviously, local businesses have to figure out a way to have the right digital presence, to have the right website, to have the right social media channels to effectively compete and in this new world. I think at this point, Steve, all local businesses understand that digital is something that they need to deal with. Local businesses clearly are in various stages of how aggressively they're doing that and how smart they have chosen to educate themselves about it. I think there are many small businesses who are really savvy. Then there are many local businesses, smaller local businesses, and particularly local businesses that perhaps have had, the same ownership for 30, 20, 30 years, who are still sort of getting into it, kicking and screaming. So I think there's still a wide range of what local businesses are doing in digital, but clearly all of them, I think there is consensus and agreement that the digital media space is something that they have to, address at some level or another. Now, as it relates to, specific products and services, I will say that, as you know, Steve, we, in my former company, we sold a lot of digital products and services, from search to audience extension to social media, all kinds of, we really were in just about anything you could think of. But the one that is, I think, making the most noise and gaining the most attention is OTT. And OTT, I'm sure most of your listeners know what OTT is, but this is the ability to place video advertising in front of cord cutters, in front of people who are watching television on some sort of connected device. And because there's so many people out there who are now watching television in that way, there is now a marketplace where you can find inventory, commercial TV, 30-second inventory, to put in front of these people who are watching, through connected devices or through, PlayStations and all of those types of things. That's been an interesting development. I think that it is still very much in the nascent stages. The technology is still relatively new. Those people who are involved in it, is a variety of reports and levels of transparency that exist. There's a lot of differences in how different video vendors and technology vendors are presenting this. But I think this is probably the most exciting piece of what's happening on the TV side as it relates to new technologies, above and beyond all of the the stuff that I guess you could consider is more mainstream now, which is the search and the display and the pre-rolls and all of that type of thing.
Mm-hmm. So with regard to OTT, it feels like there's an obviousness to it. In fact, the whole notion of cord cutters, like, who's a cord cutter? You can't cut the cord that disconnects you from the internet. So, now you're hearing more about cord stackers. They still need the internet, and they're going to get it from maybe the cable company, but so they stack on top of that the OTT. So it just seems to me that we're rapidly entering a world where the viewer, I don't think, cares whether it's OTT, cable, no way that's broadcast. No, that's something, it almost doesn't even matter to some viewers. But so where do you see the resistance to that? Is it that the seller is resistant to selling something other than O&O inventory, or is it that the buyer just doesn't understand or doesn't believe that you could really reach people through OTT?
Steve, I think the problem is quite the opposite. I think that the traditional TV sellers who run up against questions about, no one watches TV anymore. That typical objection. Now they have something very much that they can answer that with. They can say, okay, sure, people are cutting cords. By the way, that doesn't mean necessarily that they're watching less broadcast television. That's not what that means. But that being said, if you're interested, Mr. Miss Advertiser, in advertising and reaching out and talking to those cord cutters, we have a way to do it. That's a very sort of familiar pitch to a TV person who says 30-second commercials inside of long-form content. From a user standpoint, from a viewer standpoint, it's the same experience. Likewise, I think, so TV sellers and traditional media sellers, and by the way, radio sellers are selling OTT, newspapers are selling OTT, because it's an exchange, platform product. Anybody who sells media can get into that game. But TV, obviously TV feels like we're in a very, very special place to be able to provide both broadcast and that kind of OTT inventory from the same person. So OTT is easy. I mean, the salespeople are excited about OTT. Likewise, the advertisers are excited about it because they see it happening, they hear about it, and it clearly represents a way to jump, to connect the dots. My not concern, but what I'm observing, Steve, is not so much that there's a hesitation, but that there is a rush to it, that there is perhaps more excitement around it and maybe even more money going to it than perhaps is needed, given the limited amount of inventory, given the technologies are still relatively new. The technology, we don't know to the extent. We don't really have a great way of targeting. You can certainly target in terms of content and all, but I just feel like advertisers love it, sellers love it, and there is a real gravity about it that may be pulling it faster than it might otherwise go.
Interesting. Yeah. And I imagine any kind of targeting would also come with it a scale problem in a local market.
No question. They're still sort of looking around and trying to figure out the scalability of it. That is, finding enough inventory. And there's also, there are tons of places to find this inventory, and you got to be careful because sometimes it can be high quality inventory, sometimes it can't be. And I had a funny story. One of the folks of the major broadcast companies who are working on trying to find this kind of inventory, they found a network that was a news network. And so I believe they started to put their OTT advertisers on this network. Turns out that it is a news product, but that all of the newscasters are in the nude. So they had to.
Oh, we misunderstood. I thought it was nude.
So they had to, regroup on that segment of where they were sending that inventory. So the quality of the inventory is a challenge from a technology standpoint as well.
Interesting. So, of course, there's always the maximum amount of available inventory where the content is the most questionable.
Exactly. That's right.
But that nude one might be a perfect market for some advertisers.
I don't know. I had never heard of it. He had never heard of it, which was why it went so far down the road on this thing, But eventually they figured that out.
Yeah, you think there'd be a ratings winner in the news business. Well, that's very interesting. So let me ask you this. We have people that listen who are salespeople and people that want to get into media. I gravitated toward this business 20 years ago, like you, maybe more, 20 years ago, because I thought I could see it then that, the world was going in that direction. But, so much has changed. So you see a lot of salespeople. You see salespeople that have worked for you and work for your teams, as well as salespeople that come to you to sell you their solutions. So what are you seeing as the sales opportunities in general and sales opportunities in media? And are they changing now then versus what they would have been a few years ago?
That's a really good point. And I'm going to draw upon the comments of a person at one of the high-ranking corporate folks at the Tegna who described it this way. He said, listen, this is how I describe a sales job nowadays at a TV station. It says, maybe you're bringing this message to maybe a new graduate, a college grad. He said, hey, how would you like it if you could consult businesses on all aspects of their marketing? Well, that sounds pretty good, sure. And what if you could do that to any client you wanted, and that you could control all of the platforms that you are ultimately placing your clients on. And let's say you have the opportunity really to dig deep into strategy and tactics and really get into the nuts and bolts of a person's business and be able to really bring them a customized solution that fits their needs, and that you have full control over that entire experience. Would that sound like an interesting job? And I thought, wow, now that's an interesting way of describing what it's like to be in a media sales position nowadays. Now, obviously, when you get into it, you have budgets and you have, there are clearly influences on you that might affect the purity of that picture. But generally speaking, I would tell you that's, I think we in the industry feel like that's pretty darn close to what salespeople today, what the job is today, and 20 years ago, 50 years ago, 25 years ago, it really was about, moving your inventory, moving your TV commercials, in my instance, TV commercials. And now I think we can take a much more holistic approach and a much more 360 approach with all the products and services that we have, both digital and TV, and be able to dig a lot deeper in with clients and be much more consultative. So that's, I think in the perfect world, that's what that's how I would paint that picture. And hopefully, and more, we're trying to reach out to the next generation of sellers to see if that's the kind of opportunity they're interested in.
Yeah. Well, it feels like it's a better job as it used to be. I mean, it was a great job if you didn't. I don't want to say this in a mean way, but if you don't like selling, like really, consultative selling, if that's not a thing you like to do, then you could sell only your own inventory. But it feels like in today's world, you're a problem solver. You got to walk in and say, this place doesn't need a campaign. They need a reason for people to leave their couch and come into the store. How do we solve that problem? And I think you got to look at it like a consultant does. And you got to sit on the same side of the desk that the business owner is to try to figure it out. And even if you don't get the job, I think there's got to be a consulting and problem solving to it that didn't exist prior.
Yeah, I would agree. I think, obviously most sellers of anything strive to be consultants to their customers. And I think media salespeople nowadays, TV salespeople, whatever, have a unique opportunity to dive in and really serve in that capacity in a way they haven't in the past. So it's a very exciting time, to be in media, and it may be the most interesting time to be in media sales ever, frankly, given all of the stuff that's happening and all of the connectivity that happens with digital.
So as you look at, you've seen so many salespeople, you've had armies of salespeople that work with you and sell to you. What are you seeing are some of the things that they're doing well, especially the newer sellers? And what are the things that you're seeing salespeople do that you think works against you, particularly in this consultative selling world where the customer presumably wants to be sold that way?
Well, I suppose what they're doing is they are taking a platform agnostic approach to their customers. And that is to say, we, in media sales really should be our primary goal should be to help the advertiser do better business and make more money. And we need to do that with our products and services. And more, I think media salespeople need to think about everything on their plate, everything, and see really what would work best for this particular advertiser at this particular moment. I find that, if we're trying to force feed anything, whether it be digital or it be broadcast television, that doesn't seem to resonate. I think businesses have gotten savvy about this, I mean, and local businesses have so many people calling on them now, so many, dozens, research says that they have dozens of people calling them on. So how do you stand out in that? And I think one of the ways is clearly, to approach this with first and foremost, we need to help you with your business, and I need to come up with a strategy to help you do that. So now again, broadcast television is a powerful tool. I don't have to tell you that or anybody else that. It still gets the lion's share of advertising in just about any measure, and so TV is continues to be a wonderful option. But when you pair it with digital, it really becomes sort of oh gosh, a no-brainer, powerful tool. So that's one thing that they're doing well. What are they doing poorly? That's an interesting question. I will tell you that my feeling is, and it's really not so much about digital or broadcast or cable or any of that stuff. I think people who do it poorly, I must tell you, I feel like sometimes just might be in the wrong business because and it goes back to really traditional, or not so traditional, but sort of the basics, which is, do you want, can you ask somebody for an order? Can you handle an objection? Can you upsell somebody? I mean, just the plain old, can you ask for money, sale issues around that. I always find that there are a lot of smart people and they're really good and they really understand media, but when it comes to that, they just, I don't know, they just get a little hiccup in their brain. So I think if you pair the right person with the products and services that broadcast television brings, with all the digital stuff, I mean, it's a real powerful opportunity for the right person.
Yeah. I think maybe that right person has changed. I think the right person in part has got to be curious, because a lot of what you're selling, you're going to be selling something a year from now that doesn't even exist right now. So, and a year from now, it'll be the same thing again. And it feels like the curious person benefits.
That's very true, Steve, because I feel like one of the things that we get, particularly I think the difficulty in traditional media, is that traditional media sellers go out with a product that's tested and true and proven, and everything is set up to transact on that media or that medium. And digital is not like that. There's beta testing. There's first in. There's all kinds of opportunities to try something and fail. And I don't think there's much comfort among salespeople in being in that position. So that's another piece of this. I feel like someone who's not afraid of trying something and maybe it not working the first time, not that it fails, but maybe, you learn from it. You do something, you learn, and then you optimize, and then you try it, and then you learn some more, and you optimize it. To your point, someone who's curious and can work through that process rather than just saying, I sold you something, it worked, can I sell it to you again?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And understands why it works. I was telling somebody that one of the fastest ways to learn about digital, if you know nothing, is to try to sell a campaign. And then as it fails, you go, "Oh, it failed. I thought it was supposed to work." And then you go, "Well, what failed?" And they tell you whatever it was. You never even heard of the word. Well, you didn't have a UTM code. You didn't have the pixel attached. What? What does that mean? And that's when that's one thing you learn. You have to learn like 1,000 things.
Exactly right. I agree with you.
What do you see are the challenges that the member organizations to the TVB, when they're recruiting? Do they have recruitment challenges? Are there certain kind of people they're looking for?
Oh gosh, the recruitment challenges. Yeah, I think that I for sure. And the real challenge is that broadcast television is not the bright shiny object anymore. I mean, if you get kids coming out of college or recent grads, I'm sure that they would rather work for Facebook or Google than for the local CBS affiliate. I mean, at least in concept. And so we have to get past this is your grandfather's medium, and teach people about what it is to be a TV salesperson, what sorts of exciting new things we're doing, what is ATSC 3.0, what will that mean for the industry when that gets more adoption. And
can you explain what that is?
Sure. So right now, ATSC 3.0 is a new way to deliver TV signals to a household. It still happens over the air, but it is IP based. It is Internet Protocol based, and so that and once it becomes IP based, then it's one-to-one marketing. There's targeting. It's almost ad delivery on television with the targeting that you can do in display. So it's sort of like it's sort of a cable on steroids, but it's all over the air in this new ATSC 3.0 protocol environment. And this is it's still new. It's still, early stages. There are a couple of stations in the United States that have turned it on, but the hope is that there's more and more adoption over the course of time, and that now it's cable that brings your television into your home, or it's streaming services, and ultimately ATSC 3.0 will allow you to make it about sending it coming in through broadcast signals again. So it's a very exciting time in that regard for broadcast because of the new technology that is still new, but everyone's very excited about it.
Wow, very interesting. Very interesting. Okay. Yeah, I just want to go back on something that you kind of glanced over very early on, but I'm always curious. How did you get into sales?
That's funny. So I was working in Altoona, Pennsylvania as a local salesman. I was a reporter. I was an on-air reporter, and I would fill in on, anchoring and stuff. And I realized two things. I realized, one, that I wanted to start making a little more money, and that those salespeople seemed to be making money. I also realized I wasn't very good at doing those live shots that reporters do when they're out in the field.
Oh, really?
So yeah, I couldn't seem to get the swing of that one. So I said, well, gee, those sales guys, we're still working in television. And somebody once said to me that early on, they said, listen, sales is a lot like being in news, which is basically your job is to go out and get people to do things that they might not otherwise do. In the journalism side, that is, get you to talk on camera or to, give you information. And in the sales side, it was, spending money with you. And so I decided that made sense, and that all of the, between lifestyle and financial issues, and, I just felt like I liked television. I wanted, it made sense for me to make that leap. So I think it was 1992. Friday, I anchored the 6 o'clock news on a Friday night at 6 o'clock. And Monday morning, I walked into the sales department. They handed me a yellow page book, and they said, let's get to work.
Wow.
Yeah.
Very cool. Very cool. And you look back and you go, that's the best move I ever made, right?
No question. No question. Very few. It was probably from my old, yes, it was probably, professionally speaking, the best move I ever made. Yep.
Yeah. When people are thinking about sales, I think they think about the horror of the worst moments that you read or you see in a movie. And it's always terrible, the cold calling or the annoying, disruptive. But you talk to anybody that's been in sales for a long time, they like the job, right? I mean, it's right. The TV job is still the greatest job, isn't it?
It's an excellent job. And I'll tell you, the best part of the job is working with clients, is being in front of a client, talking business, talking about, what's going to work, what's going to not, or, getting involved, becoming friends, having them over for dinner. You end up making, you end up with, with really rich relationships. And I loved being in sales, and I love being in sales now. Clearly, I guess I don't know, the problem is, but, as you move up in sales, that's sort of, that can at times remove you from day-to-day experiences, day-to-day interaction with advertisers or clients. And, so you got to deal with that. But I always felt like the most fun I ever had was working with a client who I knew, who I liked, they liked me, and we were going to try to, work on something. That always got me jazzed.
Yeah, great. Well, that's still my favorite thing too, and that's totally what keeps me in. That's wonderful. Well, David, you've been great. I'm going to give you one more question to answer, which is, if somebody is thinking about a career in media right now, and you hear the worst things, including AI is going to remove it'll delete all sales jobs. So, given all the threats to sales, given all the changes, given all the jobs, the alternative jobs that are out there, what advice do you have for the media salesperson of today and tomorrow?
Yeah, I think that there is a couple of things. One is that I think broadcasting is still a local. It's a local job. It's a job that focuses on the local community, and in that regard, broadcasters will always want salespeople. They'll always want good people connecting with their customers to make sure that that relationship is strong, and that advertisers are happy. Listen, if local business is lousy, then television stations aren't going to make any money. because there's going to be no one to advertise. And so, we have this unique relationship where we need them to be good and they need us to be good. And so I think there will always be salespeople. There'll always be a need for salespeople, and good salespeople will always have a job. Always. There are very few jobs that are less likely to be outsourced or be turned over to technology than sales jobs in media, working with advertisers, working with clients at the local level. It is, I think that's sort of woven into the fabric of broadcasting. And sure, like Google, everybody knows Google, but you know what Google doesn't want? Google doesn't want local salespeople. They have no interest in hiring and employing and training local salespeople to call on businesses large and small in a local community. Frankly, they have no interest in that, but broadcasters do. And so, I think it's a wonderful job for that, and to stay connected to a business community, stay connected to the community at large. In that regard, it's really fun.
Wow. You hear so much negative, so that is a great, very positive message. And I agree. There's so many people that scratch their head. They go, what am I going to do for a living? And even if you don't think about sales, I think there's a sales component to jobs, because there's always somebody you have to convince to do something, or
everybody sells,
together.
Steve. Yeah. Steve, everybody sells. They may not know it. They may not make commission, but everyone sells. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with it. It's in some respects, it drives our economy.
Right. Okay. Well, that's excellent. Well, it has been a pleasure and a privilege to speak to you for this long, David. I wish you all the luck. We're going to keep up with you with the TVB and see if we could keep understanding what it is you're doing, and we'll have you come back when you've been there for a while.
Well, great, Steve. I appreciate the time. Always a pleasure to chat with you, my friend.
Thank you. Until next time. Thank you very much. This is Steve Bookbinder, your sales coach. Please contact me if I can help you. And until then, have a great day. Make more sales and make them easier. See you.